Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We will unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. If you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, remember, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, book a call with me at offthecomma.com. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. We're back with another episode of the Off the Comma podcast and another just really powerful story to add to our community of stories and human experiences. And I'm particularly excited about today's interview because I'm going to be interviewing someone who I've met in a professional capacity and am now working with in a volunteer capacity on the board of a local professional association. And so someone who I'd only encountered at kind of networking events in the past, now I'm really getting to learn about and getting to know more as a person and as a delightful human being. And so grateful that she has been able to come here and join our community of voices. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisa Laughter. Thank you so much for being here with us. And yeah, as we get started, I guess the first question I always ask is, how would you like to be known?
Thanks, Paul. I'm also grateful to be here. I would describe myself as supportive, accepting, and kind. That's how I want to be known. One of the tattoos that I have on my arm says "Be the change." That is what's my sort of my motto that I live by. I really, truly want to be the change I wish to see in the world. I want to show up in a way that is supportive, kind, and accepting every single day. And my current role, the organization you referred to, I'm the president of ICF Sacramento, the International Coaching Federation, Sacramento. And I've been involved with that. I've been a certified coach since 2014, and I didn't join ICF until 2020. So I had some resistance to joining ICF and then dove in because I was looking for a coaching role and decided to change my professional affiliation to something more coaching related and got involved in ICF Sacramento right away and was on the board within a month or two, surprisingly, when I joined. So I like to jump in and support and help out. My professional role is for the last 8 months, I've been the senior career coach at UC Davis and UC Davis Health in the Learning and Organizational Development Department of Human Resources. My previous 20 plus years of experience has been in higher education and student affairs and academic affairs as an academic advisor.
Mm-hmm. Well, a rich and robust history, right? And I can see, when you talk about supportive, accepting, and kind, I have to say and acknowledge you for that, because that certainly has been my experience with you and what we've really kind of known each other less than a year for the most part. And I see that arc through your career, being kind of other focused and human focused, it seems. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Awesome. Before we get into the questions, I always like to do this with each guest. And that's, as you look ahead to the conversation we're going to have the next 45 minutes or so, what intention would you have for yourself in showing up and sharing your story?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is just being authentic, being myself. I have like affirmations and things all around me, but one of the cards that I have right in front of me says, "I am enough." And I have to remind myself that quite often, that I am enough. So whatever I'm going to say, whatever happens, it's enough. It's just what it's supposed to be. My top 5 strengths of Clifton Strengths, I'm also a certified strengths coach, is connectedness, empathy, arranger, developer, and relator. lots of relationship things, that connectedness. Strength means basically everything. I see that everything happens for a reason. So my intention is just to show up, and whatever's going to happen is supposed to happen for whatever reason it's supposed to happen.
Wonderful. I love that. And I mean, it resonates with me. Sometimes I'll self-reference in these conversations because we're humans, right? And it's like, I love that because it's, for me, what I take from that is that it's so easy for me to come in with an agenda or like all this planning and all this pressure, and life just keeps sending me messages. And now today, here's another one. I won't explain why it's relevant to me. You've already touched me. Like, let it happen, right? So that's wonderful. My intention today is to support you in achieving your intention and creating the space for you to be able to do this. But as with every episode, is that your story will reach someone that it needs to reach out there, someone who's going to see a little bit of themselves in you. You're going to be a mirror for them in their life. And in being touched by your story, they'll feel a little bit more connected, a little bit less alone, and in the best case, a little inspired and empowered. So that's what I want to be able to help you accomplish today.
Love it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, with every episode, we always have the same 5 questions that we use to framework our conversation. And you and I haven't talked about what you're going to be sharing today, because I always like to have the same experience that our listeners would have. And so let's start with the first question, and then the conversation will flow. And the first question is, Lisa, where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life?
I shared with you before we started recording, I was talking to my daughter about this morning. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's like, well, what are you going to talk about? And I said, I don't know. The podcast is called Off the Comma. And I said, I'm thinking about where I've experienced a comma in my life. And she gave me an example. When my mom passed away when I was 16, I was like, no, I don't think that's the comma I want to talk about. But the thing that came to mind was, I call it my black hole moment. It's like this pivotal, transformational moment in my life where all I saw was a black hole. Like I couldn't see anything moving forward. So what that was, my daughter was 2-ish. I was in a relationship with an Oxycontin addict. I weighed about 300 pounds. I was pretty grumpy and miserable. And I was sitting in the parking lot in the small college town that I lived in, between these 2 fast food restaurants, trying to decide where I was going to start my binge, because I just wanted to eat my feelings. And I called my best friend from grad school, who I called when I had problems. And she was like, all right, Lisa, I love you. And you need to zip it. Like something about you fundamentally needs to change. Because here's the deal. You follow yourself wherever you go, and you attract what you are. And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't understand. She's like, well, you can move to Texas or Timbuktu or Tanzania. It doesn't matter where you move to. You can quit your job. You can get out of this relationship. You can change your environment. But wherever you go, you're going to follow yourself there. And until something fundamentally about you changes, the same shit's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep recreating itself. You're going to attract what you are. And then she asked me, so what is it that you want? What do you want in your life? I was like, that's an excellent question. I think I want to be a good mom. I'd love to own a real home someday, because I own like a manufactured home at the time. And it was all material things. This is what I want. Like, I want to be good at my job or whatever. And she said, no, Lisa, what do you want for you? And it was like crickets. That's why I call my black hole moment. I was like, I have no idea what I want for me. Because I was so busy trying to control everybody else in my world, I didn't even really think about myself. And so I finally came up with peace and serenity. I was like, that sounds good. I've never really experienced peace and serenity. I grew up in an alcoholic home, lost my mom when I was young, grew up really fast. And I was like, that sounds kind of nice, better than the chaos and insanity that I've been living in for years. I didn't know how, didn't know where that was going to happen, but that's sort of where that's my comma.
And what a big story too. I mean, that's like this pivotal point in your life. You're carrying all of these things that appear to be really heavy at that point. Mm-hmm. And what I so appreciate about what you shared is this being able to identify, I really don't know what I want, which then becomes kind of a challenge, because how do I identify that? And this thing that really kind of stands out for me, a lot of times, you and I being coaches, we have experiences with clients and conversations and so forth. A lot of times, especially here in America, when you ask someone, what do you want? The response gravitates towards the material things, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm supposed to have certain things, housing, cars, belongings, or I'm supposed to achieve certain things, jobs, status, titles, income, and so forth. And you chose state of being, mm-hmm. peace and serenity. Like that bubbled up for you above all the other things that you could achieve, acquire, or accomplish. Mm-hmm. What was it about those two things that was so significant and so important for you in that moment?
Like I said, I'd never really thought that I experienced that, but I heard about it. Like I heard those things. Sounded good. So I was like, well, that to me is where I listened to my higher power. To me, that was one of the God moments in my life where my higher power spoke through this other person, helped me see and listen for what I really needed and where I was going. So I have found that in the recovery communities that I'm in. I found that peace and serenity and really know that experience today, mm-hmm. which still feels very foreign. I've been doing this, that was 14 years ago. And so I've been in recovery for 14 years. And when I feel that peace and serenity, I'm like, wait a minute, the other shoe's got to drop. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to give me a call or something's going to happen. I can't it's hard for me to experience that peace and serenity. It's still a very core reaction of mine to be on guard.
Interesting. There's like that. It mm-hmm. sounds like there's an elusive element to it, even though you have evidence that you have been able to accomplish this or acquire this or have this experience it, right? Mm-hmm. I'll ask the second question and we'll go back and forth between question 1 and 2. But as you talk about this experience, significant experience with sitting on the comma, what did it create for you, or what has it created for you?
I feel like a cascade of transformation in my life. So her prescription for me was to go to Al-Anon. She's like, just go to Al-Anon. And I was like, well, I don't need to go to Al-Anon. It's all these messed up alcoholics and addicts in my life. They're the one that needs help. My ex-husband, I went through outpatient. I did Al-Anon when he did outpatient. With my ex-wife, I went through Al-Anon when she did outpatient. But I just kept pointing the finger, like they're the ones that need the help. I don't need the help. So whatever. I went to Al-Anon and I sat. I will never forget the basement of this church on a crusty orange couch in my sweatpants. They were the only things that fit me because I was so big, and just bawling because of the insanity of my life. And everybody around me was laughing and joking. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is so weird. Don't you all have like messed up addicts in your life? And they said things like, yeah, but we didn't cause it. We can't cure it and we can't control it. So, we just, that loving detachment, all the mottos in Al-Anon. And I didn't get it, but I kept showing up. And I said, okay, the 12 steps, like give me the 12 steps so I can go fix all the fucked up people in my life. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way. The 12 steps are for you. You get to come back and just keep coming back and maybe get a sponsor at some point. And then in that, I went to Al-Anon, then I found FA, Food Addicts in Recovery Anonymous.
Mm.
That like all this stuff coincided. Like once I had that conversation, then all this stuff started happening. My thesis advisor for my master's program, I went to lunch with her at some point, and she was eating differently than usual. We always talked about weight and food, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not eating flour and sugar. I'm doing the 12 steps." I'm like, good for you. Like, I don't even know, like, how do you eat anything? Because I didn't know how to eat anything other than flour and sugar. I didn't even know what peaches look like in their natural form. I only knew what they look like when you like poured them out in heavy syrup from a can, because that's how I grew up. I'm like, oh, that's what a peach looks like? Or not a peach. Yeah, peaches and pears, actually.
Yeah.
So she told me about FA, whatever. I went to FA and heard my story. That's where I was like, oh, I'm not alone. So in Al-Anon, I'm not alone. FA, I heard I'm not alone. And I heard this hope, this experience, strength, and hope that I didn't have to be so fat and miserable. I could lose weight and it was free. I'm like, what? Okay, what do you want from me? I was so skeptical. I didn't trust anybody. Everybody wanted something from me. But I kept coming back to that. And then again, in alignment with all that, the friend, the black hole moment friend, I'll just name her. Her name is Karen. My friend Karen did Choice Center Leadership University. And she's like, oh, it's like this much money and you fly down to Vegas and you do this thing. And I'm like, no, then you like, if you can't afford it to like stay in a hotel or whatever, people will let you stay with them and they'll get you there. And I was just so, I grew up in that alcoholic household where I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust anything. My dad had a t-shirt that said, he who dies with the most toys wins. Like there was a reason that I went to the material right away. And I was just very resistant to it. And somehow I broke down. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go. So I went to there was 3 different like discovery, breakthrough, and leadership. And I went to the discovery. It's like an emotional intelligence kind of thing, life transformation experience. And I rented a hotel and I got a car and I, did this thing very reluctantly and resistantly. And breakthrough was a breakthrough for a reason. I broke through lots of shit at that state, along with doing FA. And then then the second through discovery, I was like, oh, I can, fly down there. I can get down there, but I'm going to trust and stay with people. And I stayed with this, happened to be a gay couple, these guys who they had this beautiful home and they're like, hey, we've got an extra room. You can use the kitchen to cook the food that you need, whatever, stay with us. And here's the keys to our car. You can get yourself to wherever you need to go to the store, go to this Choice Center thing. It was a BMW. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how is somebody, again, do you want something from me? Like, what do you want from me? Because how could you possibly be that kind and generous? I didn't understand that humans could be that kind. So yeah, that's really where all those things happened in tandem, going to Al-Anon, finding FA, going to Choice Center. Then I went to coaching school. And through all of that, like personal breakthroughs, learning how to trust others, really, I am not the same person I am today than I was 14 years ago. I was, again, talking with my daughter this morning, and she said something about, basically she asked me to not turn into one of her friends' moms. She's like, if you hang out with her, you'll turn into her. I was like, no, honey, I won't. I said, that's who I was before. I know what that's like. She's like, no, you weren't. You've never been like that. I said, oh, yes, I was. Before you, sweetheart, I was a different person. And today I am supportive, accepting, and kind, and beautiful, powerful, and free, which I wasn't. I just wasn't before. Yeah. So.
And I have to say, because obviously our listeners are only going to hear audio, but they can't see you. and you and I started this conversation, and you were just measured. Like, we had some conversation before we started recording, but you were just kind of measured and kind of like in neutral. And since you started talking about your transformation, you have lit up. You are smiling, your cheeks are pointing up, you're glowing. Like, I can see how much of an impact this has had on you, because I also noticed, you clearly showed us how you came into this world with challenges and lived with some pretty heavy challenges. But I also noticed something. Correct me where I misstate anything or reflect anything.
Sure.
This theme of resistance and breakthrough, resistance and breakthrough. It started literally with like, I didn't want anything to do with ICF. And then boom, now I'm ready for a change. Let's go towards ICF. And then each of these examples, these different possible paths and solutions for you, resist, resist, resist. And then I'm all in.
That actually reminds me of a workshop that I did. I was really involved in NACADA, the National Academic Advising Association, for years. Advising is my profession, and I like professional development. I was did lots of leadership things in that organization, and I presented a program. Well, I did Journey to Wellness. So I talked about my story a little bit and wanting to support advisors in the work that they do and taking care of themselves. Because I realized I'm a 300-pound lady sitting here trying to give students advice about living their lives in a better way. I'm like, oh, listen to me. And then I did a presentation called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, based on Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And that really resonated with me, because that's what I like all these moments where I was terrified. I didn't want to do them, but I did it anyway. I felt the fear and I did it anyway. And I also did not believe in a higher power before I came into 12-step work. I was very resistant to a higher power or God or anything that I perceived as religious at all, which it's not in 12-step recovery. But that wanting to jump, like I jump off the ledge and know that I'm going to be caught. I trust that I have a higher power who's got something planned for me. And I know that I'm alive for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but there's many points in my life where I didn't care where I lived or died. And I acted like it. I mean, drugs and alcohol and stuff. Like I didn't even realize I was an alcoholic until I realized I was a food addict, when they told me I couldn't have like my half gallon with dinner or whatever, my bottle of wine or my 6-pack of whatever. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm weighing and measuring my food. Can't I just drink whatever I want? I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. I was like, oh, I do have a problem with, I just had a problem with excess anything that I could use to numb my feelings is where I lived.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, I too, had a relationship with alcohol. You and I know this, we've talked about this, but I quit drinking a couple of years ago, and I can certainly see myself in some of the things that you're sharing. I remember my ex and we would go through these periods because we love to party and entertain and eat fancy foods and stuff. And, we got to lose a little weight. So back in like the 2000s, when Weight Watchers first started the points thing, and I would literally, as I was building my diet plan for the day, how many points is a bottle of white wine? And then, okay, well, I only have X amount of points
left.
Let's
build around that.
Yeah. And then, okay, I guess I'm going to be adding a lot of broccoli and things that are the free points too. So I still have a calorie bulk. But to your point, what you said is really a big deal, right? Like it's never about just the alcohol. It's never about just the drugs. It's never about just the food. It's what is it that we're trying to use those things for? What was it for you? Yeah, I feel like you kind of shared that, but I'd love to ask that question specifically. What were you using food for?
To escape reality, because I didn't really like the reality that I was living in. I attracted what I was. I attracted an alcoholic husband that cheated on me, didn't work out. Then I attracted another addict. I kept attracting what I was. And in those situations, like wanting to not be in them, but in them. And so knowing myself to just get through the day. My core loss, my mother, when I was 16, really, that's another one of my most pivotal, impactful moments of my life when I lost her. And I didn't really know how to feel, like to experience feelings or what to do with them. And a lot of that had to do with when my mom, like I was holding my mom's hand as she was being taken off of life support and felt the life leave her. And I like kept all my shit together up to that point. And then I lost it. Like I just started bawling and hyperventilating, like realizing the reality of what was going on. My dad turned to me and told me to get my shit together and shut the fuck up. And I was like, so since then, I tried to keep it together and shut the fuck up. and I've numbed and ignored the pain of that for a very long time. And the pain of growing up in that home that was difficult. And then, I grew up when I was 16. My dad handed me the checkbook, said, here, pay bills, buy food, figure it out. And then when I was 18, changed the locks on the door and said, peace out, good luck with life. There's a lot of things that I look back now and go, well, no wonder I just didn't know how to navigate the world without a substance to try to help me make me feel better. And it was a way of connecting with other people. I realize now in FA, people talk about food a lot. Like I was at a staff meeting. I will never forget this either, where we were at lunch when somebody was leaving, and we're talking and chatting. And then I try to change the subject because it would always go back to food, and then it would always go back to food. And then I like change the subject and then drip back to food. I'm like, how is it that everything is linked to food? I don't understand. Like, can't we talk about real stuff? But not everybody wants to talk about real stuff.
That's a fascinating thing. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for that situation with your mom. That's such a powerful thing that you shared with us. So thank you for that. I think there's a lot of folks who you've just given them permission to say that out loud too, what that was like and how difficult that had to have been. And what I see and what you shared is it wasn't just, it was so many things in that little moment, right? Or that big moment, I should say. Losing your mom, then being forced to suppress your feelings about it. And then what must have been, I'm inserting my own interpretation here, so please correct me. But sure. Then being let down by your father because that's not the type of support that you needed or wanted. And what does that say about him? So there was a lot of things happening in that moment. So, I see how really just huge and disappointing that must have been for you.
It is one thing that I've had another realization about is my daughter turning 16 this week and going, oh shit, like I'm starting to have compassion for that 16-year-old Lisa who I can't imagine her losing me. Like, what would she do without me? I've instilled a lot of great things in her and values, and she can take care of herself, but how much would that suck for her? And how much did that suck for me? Because my dad pretty much left, and he did tell my sister and I, like, I won't get together with anybody until you guys feel comfortable with it, and everything will be, I'll be here. The weekend that we buried my mom, he came home with a woman, and he's now married to her today. Like, what? So again, being able to trust people, what they tell me, and then what they actually do, like what? It's incongruent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, lots of great learning and lots of therapy, lots of 12-step work has helped me get to where I am today to be able to support others. And that's where I say be the change. That's where I really want to help others see that they don't have to be the victim. I lived as a victim for a really long time. I get to live in the solution today, not the problem.
Well, and you really already kind of started on the next question, which is, what did you learn about yourself? What are you learning about yourself as a result of this comma?
Yeah, I'm learning. I think one of the key things is that I can't do alone. Like I tried to, from that 16-year-old girl having to take care of everything, I felt like on my own. I thought that's just how I had to handle life. I just had to do it on my own and to figure it out. And I did have some family along the way, like my grandmother I would go to, and she would help me when she could, emotionally and things like that. But um, yeah, I learned that I can't do this alone, that I need a support community around me to be able to do what I do, to get through my day. Honestly, I've gone to therapy. I've learned that that's a really important tool. I have a whole. I heard this in a meeting that I was at this morning, that I used to live with a plate full of food. Like I had this overflowing plate full of food, and now I have a plate full of tools. I have all of these tools that I can access today. I can call people. I can write. I can pray. I can just be active. I can get out in nature. I can, just I can be of service to other people, which is what helps me get out of myself when I'm in one of those spinny moments of poor me, poor me. I can get out and help somebody else. And that always makes me feel better. I can practice gratitude.
Yeah. Saying
what I'm grateful for, because I have so much to be grateful for.
Yeah. Well, and it strikes me that it's also a plate of nourishment. Now, here's the thing I'm curious about, because every now and then in one of these conversations, I hear something that's like, let's go a little bit deeper on that, because I don't know that we always ask that question or hear the answer in kind of the mainstream, how we consume content and information, right? But you, as someone who, we've talked about, you've shared with us, it initially kind of like resistance might be a little bit of your process, it seems, right? But as someone who experienced resistance and certainly had lots of reasons to not trust and then to try to go it on your own, you started the answer to this question saying, I can't do this alone, and I needed a support community. When you look back to who you were before and now who you are, what's the thing that was new and different that you took from your support community? What's the thing today that back then you probably couldn't have predicted?
The thing that came to mind is that I allowed people to love me before I learned how to love myself. Like I didn't know it was really possible to love myself and that others could love me, that I was lovable. I thought I was kind of a piece of shit and didn't really deserve to be around. So why would you, then I would think you're kind of weird because you like me? What? Or something's got to be wrong with you, because if you like me and want to be my friend. So today I have friends that I don't know. I can't even describe the depth of relationship that I have with people today and the trust that I have with people. And this is kind of morbid, but this is one of where I would go in my victimness when I was a recruiter for the university I worked at previously. And I would drive to wherever I'm going, to these schools far away. And I would think often about driving off the side of the road. Like, who would even notice if I died? Who cares about Lisa? And there was plenty of people who cared about me at that time. I don't think about that anymore, but I do think if something happened or if I needed help, there would be an abundance of people who would be there for me. And that I'm deeply grateful for. What made me go to that, or this next thought, is another question that friend asked me is, I'm sure you've asked this question maybe in some of your coaching sessions before, but if you were to think of yourself on your 80th birthday and look back on your life, what do you want to be remembered for? Or what's important to you? And it's not the things that I have, it's the relationships that I have, the influence, the impact that I've had on people's lives. And when I get that reflected back to me about how I've literally helped transform someone else's life by something that I've said or that I've done or whatever, that's why I'm here. I want to be able to inspire and help others. I did a TED Talk in 2014, I think, right before I did my coaching school. And they just, like you did, describe who you are and what you do. And I said, I'm a motivational speaker and life coach. I wasn't really, I wanted to be, I aspired to be a motivational speaker. I wasn't a life coach yet, but everybody told me I'd be a good one. So I'm like, well, I'll just call myself that. That sounds good. And now I'm those things. I do motivational talks. Now I am a life coach. So I do also believe in the power of manifestation. You state something about what you want or who you want to be. And again, that's focusing on the solution and become that. We have the power to make those things happen.
Yeah. Oh, you said a couple of things that are just just so like powerful and impactful. First of all, letting people love me before I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just going to let that one stand all on its own. And I'm going to spend that's a journal prompt for me for later. And again, you've said what comes up over and over and over again. And I don't even want to name the specific episodes because I don't want to forget who said it first, and it doesn't matter. But the power of speaking your reality into existence. Amina specifically, I forget her episode number, but Delamina, she said it exactly that way. But you are talking about that, right? Like, you don't even have to, and Cammie talked about it too. You don't necessarily have to believe it to do it or to work towards it, right? And or to achieve things. So powerful. Like, just say it. Just say it out loud. In your example, it kind of surprised you. It sounds like, or no, you had put some thought into it, but just say it, and you might be surprised where it will take you. And the flip side of that is also true. I look at myself and how often I say nasty and mean things to myself. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've even been told, I'll share with you, which means I'm sharing with everybody who's listening, right? But I had a reading done. I don't necessarily believe in any one particular thing or that any one thing is the answer, but I believe they're all tools and pathways to help us see and listen to ourselves, what we're already. So if you do a psychic reading or a tarot reading or whatever, like, you're not hearing somebody else's predictions. You're hearing validation and confirmation of what you already knew to begin with. That's what I believe. But this one person said, be careful what you manifest. You're a powerful manifester. I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking, well, fucking prove that by me, right? Like, they're like, you are so powerful at manifesting. You have to be careful what you say out loud because the universe will bring you anything you say. And I'm like, ooh, that's an important message. And here you are showing us how powerful that can be when you're speaking your aspirations and your intentions into reality. That's amazing.
Holding myself small. Not because I've also heard that same thing stated to me. There's lots of people have been mirrors for me and reflected the potential greatness that I have. And that just doesn't seem, probably my upbringing or the society that we're in, or the social influence, but don't get too big for your britches. Don't boast or don't be too proud. And that's one of the things that I'm learning today is to lean into that a little bit more, to who I am and to what I have to bring to the world.
And we definitely see that in the story that you shared, right? Like, that's one of the big shifts is you have definitely moved into embracing who you want to be and not holding yourself back, as you've shared. Question 4 is, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma? I feel like you've answered some of that, but what would you add?
I guess the thing that comes to mind is my entire worldview. Like, I see the world in a different way through different lenses. It's like seeing through, I wear glasses. So instead of seeing through fuzzy, dirty glasses, like really clean, clear glasses, I can see the potential in people. I can see the potential in myself. I'm sorry. Can you remind me of the question? I just got distracted.
Yeah, it's no, it's great. And like, I think even there's something in that, like, just really going into all these things that have shifted. The question was, what's changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma? You said your whole worldview has changed. Yeah.
Yeah. How I show up for people, how I just navigate life today, has changed. Setting boundaries, like learning how to set boundaries and to have relationships where I speak up. That was my 2023 was it 2022? I have like a word or a sort of a thought every year. 2023 was do one less thing. I didn't do that very well, but the year before, that's when I became president of ICF. Do one less thing, Lisa. Let's do one more thing. Was to speak up, like just speak up, because again, in my upbringing and a lot of experiences in my life, I was told to just like keep it down or shut up or don't say what I think or your opinion doesn't matter. To just be quiet. And I'm a people pleaser at heart. You know, that's what growing up in an alcoholic home, you learn how to not rock the boat, just kind of like navigate things that way, or I learned how to navigate it that way. And speaking up for what I need and what I want is a new adventure for me.
I love it. And I see it. I actually see that. And I mean, in our interactions, which is just a small slice of your life that I've been a part of, but I see that. I see that very consistently. I would say, yeah, I see that too. What would you say your biggest gain is?
I guess it would be to live my life. Like I get to live this full technicolor, beautiful life that I was living in the dark before. I still experience dark. I still, have dark moments, but generally I'm not living under that storm cloud. I'm living more under a bright light. I've got up on my wall here, I've got 3 vision boards and what they say about my life. And the first vision board I made had all material things on it. All like the house, the car, the boat, the whatever that I wanted. And today, the things that are on my board are play, giving myself breathing space, having a brave heart, gratitude shifts your attitude, leave a beautiful legacy, the year of self-love, self-compassion, self-care is not selfish, rest and reflect, resilience, you have the power to thrive. So many things on there that I get to look up at when I'm working and go, yeah, where am I at with that? Am I leading with love today or am I leading with fear? I want to lead with love today.
Such different messages from the early part of your story, right? Oh, wow. That's amazing. Lisa, last question. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
Continuing to put one foot in front of the other, continuing to get up every day and live that core belief that I have to be the change that I wish to see in the world, to take that pause, to breathe. Yeah, I think that's really what it means to show up in the way that I described myself at first, supportive, accepting, and kind. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The word that kind of stood out for me, all of those things are beautiful to me, but I just hear this word continue, just really kind of shined, highlighted, emphasized, whatever visual effect, Canva, but yeah, continue, just like keep going. Right. And there's so much more packed into that. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing this story. It's already resonated with me today, and I know it's going to resonate with so many people. What would you acknowledge yourself for now that you look back on the last 45 minutes or so of our conversation? What would you acknowledge yourself for?
Meeting my intention of just showing up and saying whatever needed to be said because somebody needs to hear it, whatever it is, and not doing that. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm not going to say the right thing, or something I should have said. And whatever. I just want to acknowledge that I am enough. I'm good enough. I did the best that I could.
Amazing. I love it. Lisa, where could people find you if they wanted to reach out to you, talk to you more about your story or experience, or just see what you're up to?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook under Lisa Laughter Life Coach. I'm on LinkedIn, just / Lisa Laughter. Where just email is fine as well. And I guess you can find me through ICF Sacramento. You can find me on ICF Sacramento, the ICF website, the Clifton Strengths website. There's lots of websites where I show up if you want to get a hold of me.
Okay, wonderful. And then one other thing that we do, since you've talked about it, is every episode, because I believe so strongly in the power of voices and us lifting each other up and really bringing visibility to others who don't always have access to it. I do this section called acknowledgments. So if you look at your network, who in your world would you like to acknowledge or give a voice to, boost, promote? Who would you like to acknowledge? And I'll include all of this in the show notes, so all the links and everything will be there.
Mm-hmm. So I said ICF Sacramento, the Food Addicts and Recovery Anonymous, IPEC, which is the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, is the coaching school I went to, Choice Center Leadership University, and some of the core. When you asked me about books, like books have really influenced me and helped me. I'm in actually 4 book clubs right now. I do too much. I like to learn, but the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. If everyone in the world would live by the 4 Agreements, it would transform everything, I think.
And it's so simple, right? It's not a big complicated read. It's 4 agreements, 4 chapters.
Yep. Very, very easy to digest and a little bit more difficult to comprehend. Like, how do I actually live that? Like, how do I not take stuff personally? How can I be really have integrity with my word?
To your point, it's great for, you don't go there for answers. You go there for like reflection and really triggering, asking yourself a bunch of great questions. Yeah,
exactly. And that's where the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I used to teach the 7 Habits to students, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective college students. The Feel the Fear of doing it anyway. And then anything by Brene Brown. I just love Brene and her podcasts and things. But I guess I do want to acknowledge Karen Collins. She's the person who, said all those pivotal things to me and really supported me with that growth. And I lost touch with her over the last few years, but she's coming to visit me next Friday, which is just kind of interesting that thinking about her a lot, and she's coming back into my world.
Nice. I will personally, I mean, our listeners won't know until someday we're down the road when we do a check-in, but I'll be personally curious to see how this arc really comes back into loop, circle, whatever the word is, right, for you. So I'll be curious to hear how that goes for you. Nice.
Yeah. And I mean, I've got a laundry list of people that have supported me along that way. So I don't want to name any specific names, but the people who have supported me know who they are. So just sending lots of love and gratitude to them for helping me get to where I'm at today.
And I would venture to bet that every single one of those folks is very proud of you and inspired by you equally as much. So Lisa, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing this with us and for putting yourself out there again, as you have been, and showing us that you've been doing. And we're very grateful for your story. I will look forward to continuing to work for you, boss, on the ICF chapter board and talk to you again very soon. So have a great week.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
What an honor and a privilege it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. I invite you to think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. It can be magical to set aside your expectations and just let the thoughts flow out of your head and onto paper, and surprises can reveal themselves to you. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Meanwhile, be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform. Also, follow me on social media at Off the Comma. Interact with the posts, share what you learned from each episode, or just share your thoughts about the topic in general. And check out my website for workshops, events, and updates. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.